Damaged goods, the transport pod hissed open, and Marcus Reid's bride stumbled onto the landing platform with blood crusting her split lip. He'd paid 60,000 credits for a pristine Xenari female. Sleek silver skin, bioluminescent markings, the works. The holovid had shown her smiling in some breeding facility on Keshra 9, graceful and intact. What arrived looked like she'd been shoved through a cargo compactor. Dark purple bruises mottled her shoulder. One delicate antenna hung at an unnatural angle. Sign here. The delivery drone thrust a datapad at him, its mechanical voice flat and indifferent. Marcus didn't move. Behind him, his neighbors gathered on their balconies, their whispers carrying across the twilight air of New Terra Colony. He could feel their judgment, their barely concealed disgust at the human who'd bought himself an alien wife when human women wouldn't have him. The Xenari female, Lyria, according to the manifest, wouldn't meet his eyes. She trembled despite the warm evening, her secondary arms wrapped protectively around her torso. When she finally looked up, her eyes held something Marcus recognized from his own mirror, rage buried beneath resignation. What happened to her? His voice came out rougher than intended. Delivery complications. Sign here. The drone's optical sensor blinked impatiently. Complications. Marcus studied the bruises again, noting their pattern. Finger-shaped marks on her upper arm. A boot print on her ribcage, visible through the torn transit gown. These look deliberate. The contract specifies as-is delivery beyond our atmosphere. No refunds. Sign here. Something cold settled in Marcus's chest. He'd known this arrangement was transactional, companionship and legitimacy in exchange for citizenship and escape from whatever hellhole she'd come from. But he'd at least expected basic decency in the transport. He signed. The drone departed without another word, leaving them standing in awkward silence. The neighbors' whispers intensified. Someone laughed, sharp and cruel. "Come inside," Marcus said quietly. Lyria flinched. He held up his hands, taking a step back. "I'm not going to hurt you. But you need medical attention, and standing out here is just giving them a show." She studied him for a long moment, her large opalescent eyes unreadable. Then she nodded once and followed him into the modest hab unit, moving with the careful precision of someone whose body was screaming in pain. Marcus gestured to the couch. "Sit, I'll get the med kit. Why?" Her voice was melodic despite its tremor, each word carefully pronounced in heavily accented standard. "Contract says you own me now. Why waste supplies?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "Because you're hurt." "So?" She lowered herself onto the couch with a barely suppressed wince. "Broken property is still property." Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he say? The contract did essentially reduce her to property. He'd signed it, paid for it, participated in a system that apparently beat women during transport and called it complications. He retrieved the med kit anyway, kneeling beside her. When he reached for her injured antenna, she caught his wrist. Despite her injuries, her grip was iron strong. "I need to see your hands," she said flatly. He turned them over, showing her his calloused palms, the old scars from construction work. No rings, no weapons. She released him but didn't relax. "The transport crew said I was lucky. Said at least my human was too pathetic to damage me further." Her eyes locked onto his. "They said you bought me because no human would want you. Is that true?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Probably." For the first time, something flickered in her expression. Not quite trust, but maybe recognition. "Then we are both damaged goods," she said softly. "Perhaps that is fair." Outside, thunder rumbled. The first drops of rain began to fall. The medkit's diagnostic scanner hummed against Lyria's antenna, and she hissed through her teeth, a sound that made Marcus's neighbor's laughter seem even more grotesque in memory. "2 fractures," he said, reading the display. "I can set it, but you'll need proper regenerative treatment at the clinic tomorrow." He paused, uncertain. "If you'll let me. Do I have a choice?" The bitterness in her voice was palpable. "Yes." Marcus set down the scanner and met her eyes. "You always have a choice. About medical treatment, about everything else the contract implies." Lyria's secondary arms unfolded slightly, a gesture he'd later learn meant confusion. "You paid 60,000 credits for a wife who says no?" "I paid 60,000 credits because I was lonely and desperate and didn't think it through." The admission tasted like ash. But I'm not, he struggled for words. I won't force anything, ever. Then you are fool. She said it matter-of-factly, without malice. On Keshra 9, they told us human males bought us for 3 reasons: labor, breeding, or violence. Sometimes all 3. Her bioluminescent markings flickered, distress, he guessed. Which are you? Marcus sat back on his heels, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what I am. A lonely construction worker who made a terrible decision at 3 in the morning after too much whiskey. He laughed, hollow. The neighbors aren't wrong. I couldn't find a human partner. Too boring, too poor, too ordinary. Ordinary. Lyria tested the word. The transport captain who broke my antenna called me exotic. Then he broke it again when I fought him. Her eyes hardened. I was not ordinary enough for him to see as person. Too ordinary to matter as one. The parallel settled between them like a third presence in the room. Rain drummed harder against the windows now, and Marcus became aware of how small his HAB unit must seem to her. 1 bedroom, a cramped living space, a kitchen barely large enough for 1 person. The walls were bare except for a single framed photograph. His parents dead 5 years now in the Epsilon station disaster. I should show you where everything is, he said, standing. The bedroom is yours. I'll take the couch. Contract specifies shared quarters. Lyria touched her broken antenna gingerly. Inspectors verify. If they find separate sleeping arrangements, they revoke my visa. Send me back. Back to what? Her silence was answer enough. Marcus scrubbed his face with both hands. Right, okay, there's a privacy screen. We'll figure it out. He moved to the kitchen, retrieving a ration pack and setting water to boil. You must be starving. The transport pods don't exactly offer meal service. They offered. Her voice went flat again. I declined. He understood without asking. The price they'd demanded wasn't credits. The water boiled, and Marcus prepared 2 cups of synth coffee, the cheap kind that tasted like recycled cardboard, but provided essential nutrients. When he handed one to Lyria, their fingers brushed. She didn't flinch this time. Why did you laugh? She asked suddenly. What? When the drone left. When neighbors laughed at you. I heard you laugh too after. She studied him with those unsettling opalescent eyes. Why? Marcus considered lying, then dismissed it. If they were going to survive this arrangement, this marriage, honesty seemed like the minimum foundation. Because the universe has a sick sense of humor. I spent my whole life trying to be good enough. Good grades, good job followed every rule. He sipped the bitter coffee, and I still ended up here, buying companionship from a system that beats women during delivery, being mocked by people who think I'm pathetic. He met her gaze. Sometimes laughing is all that's left. Yes. Lyria's markings pulsed once, briefly bright. Sometimes laughing means you have not yet surrendered. Is that what your laugh means? When they hurt you? No. Her expression shifted into something predatory. My laugh means I am remembering their faces. For later. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. Not fear exactly, but recognition of something dangerous poorly concealed. Later? Xenari have long memories. She stood, moving to the window where rain streaked the glass. And New Terra has many dark alleys. Marcus should have been alarmed. Should have seen the red flags. Instead, he found himself asking, the transport captain. Did you get his name? Lyria turned, and for the first time since arriving, she smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Jonathan Carver, why? Because construction workers have access to building schedules, and Carver has to land somewhere eventually. Marcus surprised himself with the words. Fair's fair, right? We're both damaged goods. Maybe we both deserve a little revenge. Thunder cracked directly overhead, shaking the HAB unit's walls. In the lightning's flash, Lyria's markings blazed like circuit fire, and Marcus saw his own fury reflected in her alien features. Yes, she said softly. Fair is fair. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something darker than either of them had planned began to take root. Not love, not yet, but something equally dangerous. Partnership. 3 days later, Marcus discovered that Xenari could move in absolute silence. He woke to find Lyria perched on the kitchen counter at 400 hours, her silhouette barely visible in the pre-dawn gloom. The splinted antenna cast a crooked shadow against the wall. She held something small and metallic, turning it over in her primary hands while her secondary arms worked at something he couldn't quite see. Couldn't sleep? He asked quietly, not wanting to startle her. She didn't flinch. Xenari require less sleep than humans, 3 hours per cycle. Her bioluminescent markings provided just enough light for him to see what she held. His building access card. This grants entry to starport maintenance corridors? Marcus sat up slowly, the couch creaking beneath him. Yes, why? Carver's ship docks in Bay 17 tomorrow. I accessed the port schedule. She set down the card and held up what her secondary arms had been working on. A thin strip of metal she'd somehow fashioned into a wickedly sharp point. I have been planning. The casual way she said it made his stomach tighten. Lyria, you offered to help. Her eyes caught the ambient light reflecting like mirrors. Or was that merely human lying? More comfortable words than action? No, I meant it. But Marcus stood, moving carefully into the kitchen. Have you thought this through? What happens after? They'll investigate. They'll find you. They will find a Xenari female defending herself against assault. She tested the improvised blade's edge against her thumb, drawing a thin line of silver blood. Perhaps they deport me. Perhaps they believe me. Either way, Carver learns that exotic does not mean helpless. And me? The inspectors are coming next week to verify our marriage. If you're arrested, then you are free of inconvenient wife. Lyria's markings dimmed. You lose 60,000 credits but gain back your ordinary life. Perhaps find human woman who pities lonely construction worker. The dismissal in her voice stung more than it should have. That's not... Marcus caught himself recognizing the test for what it was. You think I'll abandon you the moment things get difficult? Why would you not? She slid off the counter, moving with predatory grace despite her injuries. We are strangers bound by contract, nothing more. You owe me nothing beyond shelter and food, certainly not risk. Marcus thought about the transport drone's indifference, the neighbors' cruel laughter, the way the system had reduced both of them to transactions. He thought about his parents who'd taught him that ordinary didn't mean cowardly. You're right, he said finally. I don't owe you anything legally. But maybe that's the point. Maybe doing the right thing only counts when it's not obligated. Lyria studied him for a long moment. Her head tilted in that alien way that suggested she was processing information through entirely different neural pathways. The right thing. You humans speak of this constantly, yet your systems sell people like produce. I know. The admission felt like swallowing glass. We're hypocrites. We build colonies on stolen worlds, create economies based on exploitation, then tell ourselves we're civilized because we have laws. He met her gaze. But that doesn't mean individuals can't be better than their systems. Pretty words. Then let me offer ugly ones. Marcus pulled up his datapad, displaying something he'd spent the last 2 days researching. Carver has a record. 3 complaints of assault, all dismissed. He has friends in port administration. If you attack him directly, those friends will ensure you're deported or worse, regardless of self-defense claims. Lyria's markings flickered rapidly, anger he'd learned. Then what do you suggest? We do nothing? I suggest we be smarter than he is. Marcus pulled up another file. His ship, the Meridian Runner, failed its last 2 safety inspections. It's overdue for a complete systems audit. But those audits are expensive, so the port looks the other way as long as nothing catastrophic happens. Understanding dawned in those opalescent eyes. You want to make something catastrophic happen. I want to make sure his ship gets the attention it deserves from safety inspectors. And maybe, purely coincidentally, some of his cargo manifests get flagged for customs review. Marcus scrolled through the data. Funny thing about transport ships that cut corners. They tend to cut corners everywhere. This ruins him without violence. Lyria sounded almost disappointed. This ruins him thoroughly. Lost contracts, massive fines, possibly prison time if customs finds what I think they'll find. Marcus paused. And he'll never know it was us. He'll just know that his luck ran out. But he lives. He lives poor, ruined, and scared. Sometimes that's worse than dying. Marcus watched her process this. And we stay free to build whatever this is between us. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the HAB unit's environmental systems humming through their cycle. Outside, New Terra's artificial sun began its slow ascent, painting the walls in shades of amber. In Xenari culture, Lyria said finally, there is a saying, patience is the longest blade. It means revenge that waits is revenge that cuts deepest. She set down her improvised weapon. Perhaps humans are not all foolish, just mostly foolish, yes, she almost smiled. Mostly foolish. Her marking steadied to a soft, constant glow. Show me how to access these inspection files. If we are partners, then I should understand the plan completely. Marcus pulled up a chair beside her, and together they bent over the data pad. Two damaged souls plotting not violence, but something more permanent. Justice that worked within the system while exploiting every crack and flaw. As dawn broke fully over New Terra Colony, the storm's aftermath left the air smelling of ozone and possibility. In the small hab unit, surrounded by stolen access codes and inspection reports, something shifted between the human and the Xenari. Not trust, not exactly, but the first fragile foundation of it, and perhaps buried deeper still, the beginning of something neither had contracted for, genuine connection forged in shared anger and mutual understanding that the world had failed them both. But neither was ready to acknowledge that yet. The marriage inspector arrived exactly on schedule, a severe woman named Administrator Chen, who examined their hab unit with the enthusiasm of someone inspecting a waste reclamation facility. Shared quarters, she noted, stylus scratching against her datapad. Joint meals. Cohabitation verified. Her eyes narrowed at the privacy screen dividing the bedroom. Though I see you maintain boundaries. My wife is still recovering from transport injuries, Marcus said carefully, standing close enough to Lyria that their shoulders nearly touched. They'd practiced this. We're taking things slowly. Chen's expression suggested she'd heard every excuse. The Xenari heal quickly. Surely after a week. The transport crew broke my antenna in 2 places. Lyria's voice carried an edge that made Chen's stylus pause mid-scratch. They also broke 3 ribs and fractured my secondary wrist. Forgive me if I am not eager to rush into physical intimacy with any human. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. I see. Chen made another note, her face carefully neutral. And you, Mr. Reid, are satisfied with this arrangement? Marcus felt Lyria tense beside him, ready for betrayal. Instead, he reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and took her primary hand in his. Her skin was cooler than human normal, the texture subtly different. She didn't pull away. I'm satisfied, he said, that my wife is safe healing and not being pressured by anyone, including inspectors who seem more interested in our bedroom than our well-being. Chen's jaw tightened. The Interspecies Marriage Act requires verification of genuine partnership, not fraudulent arrangements for citizenship. Then verify. Lyria stepped closer to Marcus, her bioluminescent markings pulsing in what he'd learned was defiance. We share space. We share meals. We share plans for future. We know each other's fears and angers. She paused, choosing her words with care, are learning to be partners. Is this not what marriage means? Partnership, Chen repeated, skeptical. She circled them like a predator. And what exactly do you know about each other that proves genuine connection? Marcus felt Lyria's hand tighten in his. They'd discussed this possibility but hadn't prepared specific answers. They'd have to trust what they'd actually built over the past week. I know, Marcus said slowly, that she takes her coffee with triple sugar because the bitterness reminds her of detention rations on Keshra 9. I know she hums when she's concentrating, a frequency I can barely hear but makes the windows vibrate. I know she's afraid of enclosed spaces because the breeding facility kept her in a cell barely large enough to stand. Chen's stylus stilled. I know, Lyria continued, her voice softer now, that he talks to photograph of his parents every morning, that he believes he is ordinary when he is actually kind, which is far more rare, that he chose justice over vengeance for my sake, even when vengeance would be easier. Her marking steadied to a constant warm glow. I know he sees me as person, not property. In my experience, this makes him extraordinary among humans. The inspector studied them both for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, surprisingly, she set down her datapad. I'm going to tell you something off the record, Chen said quietly. I've been doing this job for 8 years. Most interspecies marriages I inspect are exactly what you'd expect. Exploitation dressed up as partnership. Men who want exotic trophies. Women desperate enough to endure anything for citizenship. She looked directly at Lyria. I saw your transport complaint. I saw that it was dismissed within 6 hours. I know what that means. Lyria's markings flickered. Then you know the system is broken. Yes. Chen picked up her datapad again, but her movements were slower now, less mechanical. Which is why I also know that Captain Jonathan Carver's ship was impounded yesterday. Massive safety violations, and customs found evidence of smuggling Xenari biomaterials, apparently harvested from rejected merchandise. Her eyes met Marcus's. Strange timing, that. His ship passing inspection for years, then suddenly everything falling apart at once. Marcus kept his face carefully neutral. Beside him, Lyria remained perfectly still. Stranger still, Chen continued. The anonymous tip that triggered the full inspection came from an IP address that traces back to this colony sector, but the encryption was sophisticated enough that we'll never prove who sent it. She signed something on her datapad with a decisive flourish. Marriage verified. Citizenship approved. Welcome to New Terra, Mrs. Reid. The formal acknowledgement hung in the air like a benediction. You're not going to investigate? Marcus asked carefully. Investigate what? A transport captain who finally got caught doing what everyone suspected but no one could prove? Chen moved toward the door, then paused. Here's some free advice. The system is broken, but it's also fragile. People like Carver have operated for years because no one challenged them effectively. People like you two, she gestured between them, who understand how to work within the system while subverting it. You're more dangerous to the status quo than any violent rebellion. She left without another word, the door sealing behind her with a soft hiss. Lyria and Marcus stood frozen for several heartbeats, hands still clasped together. Then simultaneously they exhaled. She knew, Lyria whispered. She knew, Marcus agreed. And she approved your citizenship anyway. Why? Marcus thought about it, about Chen's carefully chosen words, about the way she'd looked at Lyria's injuries and made her choice. Because maybe she's tired of seeing the system win. Maybe she wanted to see damaged goods fight back and survive. Lyria turned to face him fully, her opalescent eyes searching his. We did survive. Together. Together, he confirmed. She reached up with her secondary hands, touching his face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she'd endured. I am still angry. At Carver. At the system, at the universe that brought me here broken. I know. But I am also grateful that the universe was foolish enough to deliver me to you. Her markings brightened, and Marcus realized he could now read the patterns. Not language exactly, but emotion. What he saw was complicated. Rage and hope, fear and determination, all tangled together with something that might, eventually, become affection. We're still damaged goods, he said softly. Yes. Lyria's smile was genuine this time and devastating in its rarity. But perhaps damaged gods build better worlds than perfect ones. Perfect beings do not understand need for change. Outside, New Terra's artificial sun climbed toward noon, painting their small hab unit in shades of gold. The neighbors would still whisper. The system would still be broken. There would be other battles, other Carvers, other moments requiring them to choose between easy violence and harder justice. But in that moment, Marcus and Lyria stood together, not as owner and property, not as desperate strangers bound by contract, but as partners who'd chosen each other in the only way that mattered, deliberately, with full knowledge of each other's damage, and with something resembling hope. The arrangement had become something neither had paid for. It had become real.